You're listening to Gay News Radio. GNR. With your host, Brandon Carmody.
You're listening to Gay News Radio. I'm Brandon Carmody. We want to welcome our listeners in the United States and around the world. We're here today with Timothy Kurek, the author of The Cross in the Closet. Tim, welcome to Gay News Radio.
Thank you so much for having me, Brandon.
Do you remember your religious upbringing as far back as Sunday school? What are your first memories of hearing about homosexuals, and what was the messages that the church taught you over and over again about homosexuality?
Oh yeah, good and easy question. I was in a Sunday school off our gymnasium in our little small church building. Go figure, we had like a half court gymnasium. But the Sunday school teacher had one of these cloth boards that depicted a certain scene from a biblical story, and I can remember sitting there stuffing my face with powdered donuts and juice, and listening to her tell us the story of Sodom and Gomorrah, and she had these little cloth or felt like asteroids that she would try to stick on the board, and they only stuck like a third of the time, which was funny to me. But that was the first time I was hearing the message about homosexuality. I hadn't heard anything about homosexuality before then, but they started on me as early as 6 or 7 years old with Mrs. Crouch in Sunday school. So yeah, it was pretty intense.
Wow, Brigham Young, I guess. All right. Well, did you believe the messages that they were teaching you, that homosexuality was the ultimate sin and that it was an abomination? Oh,
yeah. You're raised to take in anything you hear at church as being the truth. I was raised to believe whatever my pastor said, from the time I was a small kid. I've got a friend, one of my, that I write about in The Cross in the Closet, my best friend, Josh, who was raised in a church where he ended up taking over at about 18, 17 as a youth pastor, and he got kicked out of the church for intimating to the kids that they should take what the pastor says and then check it against Scripture. So, that's the mindset that we had. It was, believe everything you hear, lock, stock, and barrel, and that was a very, very anti-gay message from as long as I can remember.
You had a friend who came out to you at a bar who had had a very rough experience when she came out to her church members and family. Can you tell us what happened?
Yeah, my friend Liz. It's really the beginning of every of the story. And go figure, everything for me has always started with a girl. Much less, a girl crying. She pulled me outside. I was at a karaoke night. She pulled me out on the back porch, patio area, and we were alone. And I could see she was very upset, and she said, "Tim, how can you be a Christian?" And I said, "What?" And she said, before I could really say anything or kind of formulate a defense and catch up to where she was, she said, "I just came out as a lesbian to my parents yesterday, and my mom said I could come back when I was fixed." And she had been raised in a Christian, very Christian, I say that in quotations, household, and she lost her entire life. And then while she was standing there crying on my shoulder, instead of being there for in that moment, all I could think about was, "Tim, go get your Bible. It's in the back seat of your car. Explain these verses to her." I was so angry at her parents because I knew, in my arrogance, that I could explain to her how she was an abomination without making her feel like an abomination. She moved in with, I guess from what I've heard, the only friend she had not under her parents' thumb and part of her really close-knit extremist bubble. And I haven't heard from her since. She was a new friend, and at karaoke, we all adopted these nicknames to go by. We had like Bad Boy Breeze and Lucky and Pimp Daddy Supreme, and it was just this big, awkward, weird group of awesome people singing crazy music. So I never got her last name. All I heard was Liz, and 6 weeks of getting to know her and singing with her and all that different stuff, and then boom, she just disappears, and that was the snowball being pushed down the proverbial mountain. So
I want to talk to you about coming out, the experiment. When did you decide to go undercover and come out as a gay man, and what was motivating you to go on that journey?
Yeah, well, that night was the decision. I started questioning whether or not the voice instantly, when she left, hey, was that voice inside your head? Was that God, or was that 2 decades spent in the hyper-conservative Christian church? Is that like kind of the voice of your programming? And in the book, I kind of use a very similar device to the show Dexter, where Dexter's talking to his father, who's obviously not there, who's long since dead. And for me, it was like this kind of version of myself that I just call my Pharisee, my inner Pharisee. And I just thought, there's no way I can understand if what I've been taught is wrong until I feel it directed back at me. And I need to be the victim of my own beliefs. So I made the decision that I was going to adopt the label of gay. Now, I hope the commercial doesn't resume anytime soon. But the big thing that people get wrong about my story when they hear about it, from a news article that has a horrible headline like "Man decides to be gay for a year," is that I've never ever claimed to know even a shred, even one tiny iota what it's like to be gay. I'm not, I would never be able to write, about that experience, because that's not my story. I'm a heterosexual male. Like, I couldn't write about being black any more than I could write about being gay. But what I was able to write about and experience was how the label of gay, when I adopted that label, and that's all I changed about myself, how everybody in my life reacted to it, and how it challenged my religious beliefs, my worldview, my preconceived notions of pretty much everything. So I say in the author's note of my book, I don't know, I'm not an expert of LGBT anything. Like, all I know is my experience with the label, and it's my story.
Who was in on the secret, and who did you have to come out to who didn't know? How did the people in your life react to it, and were you treated differently when you came out as a gay man?
Yeah, I was let 3 people in on things that were a part of my, my life. My best friend, who I told because he has a very good relationship with my family, and I knew that because I've known him for a decade, and I thought that he would be able to give me kind of intel on what they were thinking about things, and if I was making any mistakes, he could be like, "Hey Tim, when you did this, they were questioning you," so I could kind of fix it. And then I told my mom's best friend of 57 years now, my Aunt Michelle, so that she could monitor my mom and make sure my mom wasn't about to have a nervous breakdown. And then I, about a week and a half into the experiment, I decided I was way in over my head, going to the gay bars and experiencing flirtation and stuff like that, pretty much as a homophobe still. So I talked to my one gay, I'd say friend, acquaintance from karaoke that I had a rapport with, Sean, who is this big, beautiful black man that looks like a better looking Reuben Studdard. I'm a big dude. I'm 6'1", 300 pounds. He makes me feel delicate, and small in his arms, right? And I kind of employed him as being my beard and my teacher, throughout the rest of the experience. So,
Tell me about the experiment. Where did you go, and whom did you meet in the LGBT community during that year? And did the community welcome you in with open arms?
Absolutely. I always say now to my, especially to my Christian friends and audience and everybody that I can tell, that if I ever went to a church that had a tenth as much grace as the LGBT community, when I first, especially those initial months, I was a part of it. It would be a game changer. That church alone would change the world. I had these friends that took an active role in making sure that I was okay. I remember asking two of them once why everybody kept asking me if I was okay. And, they said, basically, if I can remember correctly, something along the lines of, well, a lot of people in this area in the Bible Belt South have a really hard time coming out. And, it's better to have, to make sure that you're not, in the graveyard, than by asking you or if you're okay, and by being there for you. And so, it was a really powerful thing for me to hear that, because it was a reality I'd never faced. I'm a privileged, straight, white, Southern dude that was, Republican and had gone to Jerry Falwell's Liberty University. It was a completely different world than anything I had experienced. Likewise, the same time that I ever was called faggot, I was on the softball team, and it was our first practice, and I'm throwing the ball back and forth with these guys, and this old man's walking by the field, and he's walking these two pugs, and he looks over onto the softball field, and he sees a field, like literal field, filled with guys in stretchy pants and pink do-rags and stuff, and he looks over at me because we make eye contact, and he's like, faggots. And I mean, I lost it. I saw red. I had never experienced that word palpably in that way. It wrecked me. I dropped my glove and was about to charge him, and the guy I was warming up with held me back and stopped me and said, "This is the first time you've been called faggot. Did you just come out recently?" I was like, "Yeah." He's like, "Well, you better get used to it, buddy. You can't go kill everybody who calls you faggot." And I was like, whoa, so.
So it was anti-gay hate speech that you saw with your own eyes, heard with your own ears, and you felt in the first person.
Oh yeah, and in Nashville, there's a little our gay district. We call it the Gayborhood because it's so small. It's like on Church Street in downtown, and it's like 7 or 8 businesses in a row in a strip of about an eighth of a mile. Because I was a barista in the cafe attached to the gay bookstore that's attached to the gay sex shop that we had, and I was working at the cafe, and I'd be outside, and there was this one time I was sitting outside, and a pickup truck was driving by, and they threw a full, like, 20-ounce bottle of, like, cherry Pepsi or something and chucked it at my head. And I've had beer bottles chucked at me, and it's kind of weird because Nashville is not that kind of place. It's very conservative, but it's very, very good because of the music scene and the art scene and everything there. It's a pretty tolerable place. It's not Jonesboro, Arkansas. It's Nashville. It's the metropolis of the South. So it was a surprise to experience that too. But I very much saw and witnessed the uglier side of discrimination.
Well, let me ask you about some of the positives, Tim. Did you make friends in the LGBT community and start hanging out with them?
Oh yeah, constantly. I spent all my time. I mean, I was so stoked when I got that job as a barista, because that allowed me to be around the LGBT community, the normal LGBT community, the everyday people. Like, when you got to a bar like Tribe in Nashville, it's a great place. Nothing really crazy is going on, but you're not meeting two young lesbian mothers who've just adopted twins from China or Africa or whatever, and getting to spend time and interact with a young gay family. That's not happening at a bar, And most of my religious stereotypes that I had been taught were alcohol related. So, it was really good to be down in our little neighborhood during the day and get to spend time with, these are all my regulars. I had, two guys who'd been together for 47 years who came in, and then I had the local Bear chapter come into the cafe every Thursday, and they tipped really well because I'm a Bear Cub. And two of the people that I was able to be around and make friends with while I was a barista were these two guys who had been together for 47 years. And one of the funny things in my personal experience is that the last few years before I did this experiment, it seemed like all of the couples that I looked up to, including my own parents, that were conservative and straight, were all getting divorces. I mean, marriages were just everywhere. And here I just had these two, amazing men who had been together through almost half a century together. It was just awesome to see. And then the Bear chapter that came in every Thursday, the families, it gave me a view into the anti-stereotypes that forced me to realize that, hey, their normal isn't all that different from our normal. And that was just a huge, huge thing for me, having been taught so heartily that we were polar opposites.
I wanted to ask you about your friend that pretended to be your boyfriend during the experiment. What can you tell us about him? And can you tell us anything about his experience during that time?
Yeah, and in a future interview or something, we'll have to get him on the phone, because he's actually done a few interviews with me in the past. Sean is his name. We had a really awesome, I would say, 7 months of my year. And then, and keep in mind, I told him I was straight, and he had always, honored that. But he pulled me, we went out to dinner one night, and he pulled me aside and he said, listen, I need to tell you that I've developed some pretty strong feelings for you. And I know that, you told me you've been straightforward with me from the beginning, but, to know you is to see your heart, and I've fallen in love with your heart, and and obviously, this is the thing that sucks about it the most, is up until I met my wife, Sean by far was the most perfect partner I could have possibly had, minus the fact that he was a male for me. Like, if I had ever had a girlfriend that was even remotely like Sean was a boyfriend, I probably would have gotten married a long time ago. He's just amazing, and I loved him too. And I had a very different kind of in love experience with him. A lot of people say that when they read the story of me and Sean, that's the love story of my book, and it's very much, I agree, it's very much a love story because he taught me how to love, a whole in a whole different way than I ever had been taught in the past. But because of the feelings that he developed and my inability to actually reciprocate those romantic feelings, we had to take a few months apart so that he could kind of get his bearings. But, he's still a very close friend of mine.
Can you tell us about when you decided to end the experiment? How difficult or painful was it for you to go back to friends, family members, and church members and sort of put the cross back in the closet, clear the air about your sexuality? Were people relieved? Were they furious?
I think the metaphor is actually the opposite. I think I'm probably one of the only, or a very small number of straight people that's ever had to live in the closet for any amount of time. Because when I came out as gay, I was essentially going into the closet as straight. And then when I came out as straight, that was when I was finally able to be me again. And not to say that my closet experience still is even remotely as sucky as the closet experiences of a lot of the people, most of the people that I know that are LGBT, but that was the most depressing, crushing, soul-sucking, awful experience ever. When I came out of the closet as straight, I felt that fear, that tangible fear for the first time that, okay, I lost everybody. When I came out as gay, I'd say 95, 98% of the people in my life instantly cut me off as though I was dead. Everything was quiet. I didn't get any phone calls. I didn't get any emails. Nobody tried to proselytize me. They just cut me off. It was like I didn't exist anymore. And Martin Luther King Jr. said, in the end, it's not the words of your enemies you remember, but the silence of your friends. And that silence was deafening. So I didn't, when I came out as straight, didn't feel like I had to go to those people who had rejected me. I felt like, oh, they'll figure it out eventually. The people that I had to come out to that I was worried about were my LGBT friends that I had been telling I was gay for a year. Granted, I didn't have a romantic relationship with any of them, or none of them had any feelings for me, because Sean had always been the person that I was like, oh, well, I've got a boyfriend, and so they were very pure friendships. But like I said, the only thing I really changed about me during that year was the label. So they knew me and they knew my heart. And so when I came out, surprisingly to me, because I even thought there was going to be a worse reaction than there was, I was accepted with open arms by the people in my community who knew me. They all basically said the same thing. Well, I pretended to be gay for 32 years, or pretended to be straight for 32 years before I ended up coming out as gay. And it's not the same thing, obviously, but it's how they made light of it, but and showed me they still accepted me. And the night that I came out to the person that I was the most afraid of coming out to, I was so scared I was going to lose his friendship and he was going to hate me. He was the one that I was afraid of losing the most out of everybody during my year. And he ended up praying over me in the bar, laying hands on my eyes, mouth, ears, and heart, and praying for me that God would use my heart and my message and my experience to change the lives and the perspectives of people who were trapped in legalism. And that was a earth-shattering moment for me.
So is it fair to say, Tim, that you have retained your LGBT friends, that they did not walk away in anger when they learned that they had been deceived?
One or two people that I was friends with, but they weren't people I hung out with regularly at all. I saw maybe 2 or 3 times during the year, who were frustrated by it but were gracious and gave me the opportunity to explain myself and my motivation and what I had learned and all this different stuff. And they ended up being accepting. But everybody who knew me, yeah, we've got every story in my book. I asked permission. I asked their express permission to be able to tell, because I did not want to tell any stories or use any information that could be looked at as me trying to use somebody for a story, or capitalize on their story, or take their story that they told me in confidence when they thought one thing and then go and write it and print it. And I didn't even make the decision to write the book until 3.5 months into almost 4 months into my year, because I was journaling daily, But anyway, so everybody who was in the book, or at least 3-4 of them, will get together at the bar in Nashville at Tribe and hang out, and it's like their little club that they were in the Cross in the Closet. And I've heard stories from them about, somebody will say something awful about me, and then all of them will just jump on that person and be like, you have no idea what you're talking about, So it's pretty cool. And I'm really looking forward to moving back to Nashville for at least 6 months, and getting to put some time and some energy back into those friendships, because it's been since early 2010, about 3 or 4 months after I ended the experiment, that I left Nashville and didn't look back. I was in the Pacific Northwest for the last 5 years.
Tim, will you agree to regroup with us at Gay News Radio when you move to P-Town in 6 months? And I will put this offer on the table. I will read The Cross in the Closet from cover to cover so that we can talk about it and debrief about it on our next interview in 6 months. And let me tell you, I am a terrible book reader. I have been a terrible book reader my entire life, and I have absolutely no excuse, because I'm an author and I'm writing 2 books right now, and I'm in prep for a third. So there's my challenge to myself. I will read your book, The Cross in the Closet, so we can talk about it, and we will do a second interview when you move to Portland. Okay?
Oh yeah, absolutely. And I'll there's some prominent characters: Will, Sean, Samantha, Connie. Connie's straight, but she's was at the time a United Methodist pastor who was very inclusive, and she ended up getting kicked out of her denomination, out of the UMC several years ago, for being too inclusive. That I could definitely get to come on the show and talk about stuff. So, but yeah, no, I would love to, and I can't wait to be back in Portland. It's an incredible place.
I saw a video where you gave a TEDx presentation about your story.
Yeah, TEDx, the University of the Aegean on the island of Syros in Greece.
Wow. All right, Tim, I'm very curious. Could you please share with our listeners, what was your experience like giving a TEDx presentation on the island of Syros in Greece?
Oh, gosh, that was amazing. The most stressful thing I've ever done in my life. I was gone for 10 days for an 18-minute presentation. And of that 10 days, I was traveling 7 of those. It was the nuttiest flight, planes, trains, and automobiles kind of experience to get there. Go figure, 2 months after I leave there that the economy collapses. I hope it wasn't my fault. But the island of Syros is Aegean, and it's in a cluster of islands about 4 hours off of the port of Piraeus in Athens, and it's one of the most beautiful places I've ever been. I felt like I was in Mamma Mia. Like it was the water was this blue, and so I got there, and of course I was nervous, but the great thing was I got off the ferry to go into the town, and they were all waiting. I dropped my suitcase literally in the lobby of the hotel I was staying at, and then marched my rear end all the way across town with everybody to the Apollo Theater, which is 151 years old, I guess, and it's just ridiculously ornate and gorgeous opera house. And I've got a video of it on my Facebook author page that people can check out. But I went and practiced and got on stage in front of a live audience for the practice an hour after I was off the ferry, right after I had finally arrived after 5 days travel. So it took the nerves away. And then they don't eat or drink anything, celebrate. Dinner is not till like 10 or 11 o'clock. So we had the speakers dinner the night before the event when we had to get up at 8 a.m., be there at 8:30. I left the party at 2:30 a.m. and I still had 2 more courses to go, and everybody was, drinking wine and eating seafood. And I mean, it was just amazing. The whole thing was just amazing. But the TEDx talk was really cool because right after I got off stage telling my story, this mother comes up to me and she says, I came from Athens to hear you speak. My daughter goes to the University of Eugene. In fact, because of you, she was volunteering. She volunteered, your student detail that's kind of following you around, helping you with things. And she said, and I know she's a lesbian, but she doesn't know that I know, and it's really strained our relationship. And she said, I came here with a bunch of questions, and you've answered all of them, and I feel like I have my daughter back. You have no idea how thankful I am. And that night, the daughter was taking me to the after party and walking me, she and her friend, and she said, you talked to my mom? Oh my gosh, what did she say? And I said, she knows you're a lesbian. I hate to tell you, but the good news is that she seemed pretty positive about things. So the next morning she comes to me and she says, I had the best talk of my entire life with my mom, and we're completely great now. And then the other girl that was walking with us to that after party is a lesbian, and she hadn't told her family. She was just really afraid to tell her family. And after hanging out and everything, the next morning she went and told her family, and they were completely okay with it. And she had, she was 2 people finally able to be out and open. And it just, my story starts with a young woman being kicked out of her home for being a lesbian. And to be on the island of Syros, 6 years later, dealing with, talking to these 2 young ladies who had experienced restoration with their families and reconciliation. It was just kind of a poetic ending for things. Yeah, I was very happy to have that experience. And the video's on YouTube. And go figure, it's gotten 128,000 views in the last few weeks since it was put up. So that was defied any expectations I would have had for it. I thought I would, I was hoping for maybe 5,000 to 10,000 people would see it.
So you did a round of media and TV interviews for your book, Tim. Can you tell us what that experience was like?
I'll put it this way. I was reading through some emails from a person that was acting as my agent before the book pardon me, before the book came out, and after the book came out, I had another agent trying to sell that to a bigger publishing house so we'd get wider distribution. And both of them said the same thing or got the same response. The story is not going to have any international appeal. It's an American story. And the beautiful thing about it is that's been the exact opposite of what's happened. The book has been translated into Hungarian and Chinese. There's a Greek translation in the works, or that's going to come out in December. I'm talking with a Japanese and Brazilian agent about Japanese and Portuguese translations and the media coverage as well. Canal Plus in France. I've had the Canal Plus in France, and then I forget the name of the network in Denmark. But two stations that sent camera crews to the United States to follow me around for several days to do these mini documentaries on my life. Go figure, like it's, a big deal. It's been really bizarre. But hanging out, getting my hair and makeup done next to Whoopi Goldberg was pretty surreal. Oh gosh, yeah. And she chose not to say anything. That's the funny thing. The producers had her attacking me. And after talking with me, she was like, yeah, I'm not going to say anything.
No, I wondered about that, Tim. When I was watching The View, I noticed that the same 2 or 3 people kept talking to you, and that Barbara Walters jumped in, which must have been amazing, and that Whoopi Goldberg was silent.
Oh, yeah, no, she was great. I saw her again the next day. She's like, how you enjoying New York, darling? Gave me a kiss on the cheek. And I was just like, whoa, this is really weird. But I had that trip was just a blast. I mean, to go around New York and do, geez, I think in that 48 hours or right at 48 hours, I did 22 interviews. My publicist, Burke Allen, came down from D.C., he and his wife, to just take me around because they knew I was young and had no experience, and they wanted to make sure everything was good. So they handled all the information about the drivers, because the next network who was having me on had to send a driver to come get us there, and so it's been nuts to when you watch a movie like Transformers or something and you see like these guys on MSNBC that you've interviewed with doing like the movie TV reporting of it. Like it's kind of surreal, seeing Barbara Walters and Whoopi Goldberg, and I'm kind of disappointed in Elizabeth Hasselbeck. Yeah, she was an incredibly open and affirming person in person. Like when we talked, she was very much, hey, I'm an ally of the LGBT community. I believe in gay marriage. I'm all for that. And I've kind of seen what I feel is like a pullback from any kind of inclusive stance since she's been on Fox and Friends, but not that I watch Fox and Friends all that much. So I mean, yeah, it was definitely a crazy experience, but it's been a huge blessing, and not many writers get the chance to tell their story in such a vast medium to so many people, and to have the Guardian pick it up, and to have the BBC there pick it up, and to have France, and I've gotten messages, thousands of messages from people all over the world. I still do, and it's been so cool to connect and make friends with those people. And I've spoken in 5 different countries at this point, so hopefully I'll get to speak in more.
Do you understand, Tim, the controversy surrounding your book and surrounding your story, pretending to be a gay man for a year? Do you understand why some people have taken a mixed reaction to what you did?
Oh, absolutely. First of all, I hate the fact that I'm looked at as being relevant. The fact that straight people would need to take the account of a straight man about gay issues at all is ridiculous and backwards. So I fully understand what the criticism is about me, and here's the thing: I understand that I also look like everything that's hurt a lot of people, and I understand that that I'm a straight guy that wrote about gay issues that's gotten to go talk to Barbara Walters and go all over the world and do a TED Talk, when the same things aren't given to the average LGBT writer. But the thing that I think that I have to keep in perspective is the issue itself is so sensitive. It's such a hot button issue, but it means so much to so many people, because whether it's important for religious people because it's a part of their religious identity, or whether it's a big issue for LGBT folks because they are gay, lesbian, bisexual, or transgender, and they are being treated as a political issue, either way, it's a huge issue for everybody involved, and I think that's why people fight about it so passionately. I'm not saying my methodology was perfect, but when you're as radically programmed and as radically conservative as I was, I couldn't have just gone to a gay friend and talked to them about their experience and had the epiphanies and the light bulb moments. I had to experience a lot of the stuff that comes with the label of gay myself. And for me, that was the only way I could do it. Yeah, I mean, I had to do my best to understand where they were coming from in a cultural way. Living in the Bible Belt, dealing with a lot of people who had been abused and mistreated and hated by their gay, by their families for being gay or their friends, having been bullied by, people. I needed to see their point of view, experience their pain, so that I could understand how damaging what I believed was. And, whether people agree with that or disagree with it, I completely understand. If they don't, that's fine. But the great thing is that there has been a lot of healing and a lot of reconciliation that's taken place, not only with conservative Christians who are anti-gay, who irrationally hate gay people, but from a lot of LGBT folks who have read the book and experienced forgiveness for those people that have hurt them, and families. More families than I could sit back and talk about on this interview have come together and reconciled as a result of hearing about what I did, and being inspired by kind of the ideas and the messages behind it. And that's a humbling thing for me to think about or even talk about, but it's one of those things where not everybody is going to be drawn to something or like something. A certain group will and a certain group won't. And you can't please everybody. And so I'm just doing my best to be the best ally that I possibly can be, to fight for equality on every issue that I can, to try to change minds that disagree with that, to fight the mindset of the Kim Davises, to fight the mindset of pretty much the entire GOP field, and all of these people who follow these people and like Kim Davis and put them up on a pedestal, thinking they're so great for what they're doing. Talking to those people and having real heart-to-heart conversations about how those mindsets are damaging, those beliefs are damaging to other people.
We had James Obergefell on as our guest last week. He was the lead plaintiff in Obergefell v. Hodges, the Supreme Court case, which, as we know, on June 26 affirmed nationwide that gays and lesbians have the right to get married. We've seen a lot of stories lately about Kim Davis, and it sort of reignited the fuse of this religious freedom versus LGBT rights and marriage equality. So I just want to pose this question to you, Tim. Is Christianity or religious freedom really under attack in this country?
No, absolutely not. People, in order to stir up and make money, tactics of fear are always employed. Every time, and this goes for both sides, every time somebody prominent comes out and says something either anti-gay or pro-gay, the other side takes it, slaps it on a mail out, and it's good for $2 or $3 million in donations from their base. We're in a very polarized country, and I don't think anybody would disagree with that. But I know many conservative people who are not even pro-gay rights that think that Kim Davis needs to just do her job. She's an elected official, and she's supposed to do what the government tells her to do. And if she's not able to fulfill that job, she needs to just resign. Instead of making a spectacle. I mean, I watched a clip of the rally from her getting out of jail with Mike Huckabee and the other guy and Survivor's Eye of the Tiger playing. And she looked like she's been compared to Martin Luther King Jr. I guess the only who was it? Colbert. Somebody said the only similarity is that they both spent time in jail, except one spent time in jail for trying to fight for the rights of the oppressed minority, and one spent time in jail for trying to oppress the minority. So yeah, no, I don't think Christians are being persecuted. I think that's their game to try to maintain relevance and to win to their worldview. Oh, we have a long way, a long, long way, and that's it's sad, but as long as kids are still hanging themselves in their closets, 11-year-olds, 10-year-olds across Middle America, in the South, all over the place, and as long as American Christianity is being exported to places like Africa, where they're willing to take the Bible so literally that they believe in killing people for being gay or imprisoning them. I've people in Uganda online who have basically said that they agreed with the killing of homosexuals for being gay. As long as those things are taking place, it's going to be a big issue. And I hate the fact, as a good friend of mine said, he just looked up at me and said, I hate being an issue. I hate being looked at as a political issue or a religious issue. I just want to be me. I just want to be a person. And I think that's when everybody on both sides realizes that we're all people. We don't have to agree with each other, but in this country, we have to respect each other's differences as we want to be respected. It's going to go a long way, but we've still got so much to do. And I'll be there until, like I said, until my voice isn't relevant, which I hope is sooner rather than later. And I'll do what I can to walk beside my LGBT brothers and sisters. And I love the interview from last week that I can't pronounce his name. I've never been able to pronounce his name. But the guy who was the lead plaintiff was that plaintiff? Yeah, Obergefell. No, I loved it. He he's just an awesome guy. I want to meet him. Definitely want to meet him. But well, yeah, yeah. I mean, our kids are going to be taught about him in school. And that's awesome. I'm so happy that it's not a straight person versus the Supreme, like that it's just it's good. I think things are happening as they need to happen, and I'm just a fan of the people who are doing the work like that. I Mel White is the founder of Soul Force, and he's done a lot in the cause, and I see so many people like Mel basically just go off and retire, and kind of they don't see their work necessarily completed as they had envisioned it. And I think that at least it's so good to live in a time when DOMA has been repealed, Don't Ask, Don't Tell has been reversed. Like LGBT equality is and marriage equality is the law of the land. I feel bad for the people who didn't get to see as much completion in their work. The ones that marriage equality stands on the back of. I think there are a lot of people that could be recognized, and I hope that we have I hope June ends up being Gay History Month. because I think it'd be really cool for people to learn about LGBT equality and the fight for it, and everything, even pre-Stonewall, up to the Supreme Court decision. And
all right, Tim, last question for you today. What did you learn about the Bible and Christianity? What did you learn about yourself and empathy? And what did you learn about the LGBT community and people from your journey?
More than anything, I learned, and this is relevant not just of the LGBT community, but of everybody that's different from me. Everybody's normal is not that different from my normal. A lot of us are different in labels in certain ways, but it's like we think that everybody puts on their pants differently, eats different things, and it's like, okay, from a straight evangelical perspective, fundamentalist perspective, I used to think gay people were like aliens, and that's not just gay people. There are other people, Muslims, Buddhists, atheists, these people who weren't in my bubble. They were like aliens to me. And now I'm realizing, hey, they're all just people, and they're just like me in most ways. And knowing that allows me the ability to have empathy and understanding, and to be able to live and respect the differences and not try to change them and make them like me. And that this practice of intentional empathy, trying to walk, just mentally, just put myself in somebody else's shoes, has given me the ability to be so much more peaceful in my life and in my faith than I ever have been before. So, it's changed my life. I was destined to be a Mark Driscoll or to do what I'm doing, and I'm just so happy that that God taught me and gave me the opportunity to learn some real grace from some amazing people.
Well, you've taken a powerful journey, Tim. We thank you so much for coming on to Gay News Radio today and sharing your story with us. We look forward to meeting you when you move here to Portland.
Oh, I can't wait for that. And if anybody wants to talk, ask me questions, rant at me, facebook.com/Timothy Kurek, all one word, is my author page on Facebook, and I answer everything. So if you write me, I'm gonna respond.
All right, Timothy Kurek, the author of The Cross in the Closet, we thank you so much for coming on Gay News Radio today, sharing your powerful and personal story with us. We really appreciate it, and we will regroup with you when you move to Portland. Thank you.
Very cool. Thank you so much, Brandon.
This is GNR, Gay News Radio.